Welcome back to Chess on the Brain. So we have a really interesting game today submitted by Kostas or Emporus on leechess.org. So I know Emporus from Leechess and also from YouTube. He's provided some really good contributions. And this is a really fascinating one. So it was from a 960 game, a Fischer Random chess game. And that's where you have randomized pieces, as you can see here. After a while, you're going to end up with a regular position, but it's kind of interesting because it makes you think right from the very beginning. You have to plan for move one. How are you going to untangle your pieces, essentially? You have some kind of unfamiliar situation, and you have to make it work. So let's analyze this game. And interestingly, he also provided, Kostas gave a game between So and Kasparov. It was a blitz game a couple of years ago, and he showed some similarities between the two games. One of those games where the position just totally is opened up. White sacrifices, but Black's king gets stranded in the center. And also I have a game by Steinitz, the first official world champion. The same theme arises there. So let's delve into it. Okay, we have d4. And by the way, this is so through Chess on the Brain, you could submit your games. Kostas did that. You could, any game that you find interesting that you've played, or maybe you were thinking what was going on there, and then we can analyze it here. You can give me your analysis, or I can just go ahead and delve into it. And hopefully it'll help you understand your own game better, and whoever else is watching can maybe gain from it too. So, okay, d4, d5. So again, it's a randomized position. You kind of have to think, all right, how am I going to handle this situation? So d4 seems reasonable. You want to approach it normally to control the center in a classical sense. At the same time, you also want to think, okay, how am I going to open my bishops up? In that case, I may have considered e4 because it immediately opens a bishop. But d4 probably has a point too. Well, you might want to play c4 as well. A lot of times I like to have that, a rook next to that pawn. So for example, if they play d5, you're already ready to pry it open using the rook as support. So I think d4 is fine. And then next might come e4 or c4. Okay, the d5 was played. Knight d2. All right, well, yeah, here's the idea of immediately going for a break. That's the strategy I tend to like to pursue, kind of like a Scotch, where you go e4, e5, and you immediately go knight f3, preparing for d4, getting that break in the middle as quickly as you can to try to get that first move advantage. So after knight bc6, and don't worry about all those little, I think it's from the computer. Let's take it off the analysis. I think the computer did some of that, like sort of automatic analysis. Kostas sent me this link. Maybe he already did that himself. I'm not sure. I think it's auto-generated by the computer. But I also did a couple of other lines as I was analyzing it. Okay. Knight c6, obviously attacking the pawn. We have to do something about it. I think we just want to drop the pawn. So he goes e3. Now there's two options, basically. You either defend with the pawn, or you defend with the bishop on g1. So the computer opts for f3. I think it does have a point. Because if we go f3, and okay, sure, let's say e6 is played, well, then we're already ready for e4. Kind of like a French defense. It's the same structure as a French, where you have 2 in the center, and then Black has d5 and e6. So you often find these kind of parallelisms between a regular game and a chess 960 game, but there's something kind of weird about it, because the pieces are jumbled up randomly. So, but still, structurally, we're seeing what maybe a French. Although in a French, it's classical, you're going to bypass it. But you don't have to. Or almost like a fantasy variation of the Carl Khan, where you just secure the center like that. But that would be against d6 instead of e6. Anyway, I won't get too deep into the openings. That's why we're playing this chess 960 game. So it's just about the ideas here. e5. Okay, well, Black takes the first crack at it. Oleg Denisenko, about a 1700 player. On chess 960, so maybe higher rated normally. You can actually click on them or hover over it. They are from Russia. 1700 something, 1800 in rapid games. So a pretty strong player, almost an expert. e5 takes. Yeah, I don't see why not. May as well take it and then continue your development. I guess, well, if you don't take it, you have to reckon with the pressure on d4. So he just takes it. Sure. Knight takes back. We've got traditional Greek music. Kostas is from Greece, so I like to, you can maybe give a request, or if you're from wherever you're from, and maybe play traditional music from your country. So h3. So this move looks to me like he wants to get bishop here, kind of snipe at the knight from that direction. Well, as in the game, he ended up playing f4. So I'm thinking, well, if you're going to play f4, your bishop might be able to enter the game that way. So this is important to really think about what's your setup going to be. Commit to a certain setup. That's what Chess 960 is really good at, because you don't have some prescribed thing that you can do, right? Like in a Scotch. You kind of know if you play a Scotch, if you play a Roy Lopez out of e4, you know what you have to do generally. Or you can, if you don't know, you can study a few Grandmaster games and you'll get an idea. Or you can read a book if you feel like it. I always recommend flip through some Grandmaster games and you get the idea. But here there's no guide, unless you want to memorize all the variations that masters have played from 960 combinations. But you know, that's going to become infinite. So just play intuitively. But in this case, you need a strong setup. So you think, all right, if I'm going to play f4, I'm going to unleash the bishop. Well, I can probably get into quick e4. So if you determine that you can get an f4 followed by e4, you know both your bishops are going to be freed. You know you're going to be striking back in the center. And then you might want to get, you know, after you hit those, you hit them in the center. If you could determine that your bishops can safely centralize, you can castle, well, then maybe that works out. But you don't try not to be redundant, because if you play h3 and f4, there might be a redundancy there and a weakness formed on g3 by pushing both pawns, because hey, once you move a pawn, you can never go back. Anytime you move, I talk about that a lot with pawns are the soul of chess. Anytime you move pawns two away from each other, you're weakening the squares in between them. So you're weakening, well, that's already weak essentially. Nothing can defend, no pawn can defend that. But you're voluntarily weakening these two. Assuming you were to push to f4 and h4, let's say, you're weakening these squares, because the pawn can never go here anymore to guard this one. And once you move this one from here, you can't guard g3. You move on both sides of it. So yeah, I would think about that. I would consider, let's look at this real quick. If you go f4, for example, well, I think what would happen is the knight might go here. So now you're not just going to easily play e4 because you're weakening f4. So we are a bit tangled up. I mean, you could consider f5, but then you give him back. You're going to give him this square back again. Although you're going to gain space, kind of pros and cons there. You're going to have to do a little cost-benefit analysis and see if you like that. Although in the game, he ended up doing something like this with c4, trying to throw this pawn aside. I might like that. You do want to guard f4, either push or... I really don't want to push too early, but you have to do something about that, because if we're going to play that, we don't want to get our bishop blocked. We really want to get e4, and I think. I mean, the drastic option would be playing g3 to secure f4, and then playing e4. That feels weakening and kind of slow. I mean, I think you can do g3 and bishop g2. Again, maybe bishop f2 and castle, and then deal with the center with e4. It's all possible. It's just a little slow. So it's something, I don't know. Somehow, yeah, f4 feels a little too early, which is why he probably opted for h3. But we need a plan for both bishops. Let's see, well, this one's going to go here. Oop, not there. And this one could come here. I think you can play it modestly, yeah. You know, I think that's the way to go. Just play it modestly right now. Maybe you've given up the chance to get an immediate strike in the center. Yeah, you could do c4 still. But you get the bishops out. You go, yeah, keeps wanting to go there. You go here, castle your king, and then you either strike with c4 or e4. Probably c4 as he did in the game. I think I like that, Kostas. It looks like kind of like a ready system or something, or like an English, where you let black take some center and then you strike back. Hyper modern system. Yeah, so rather than the classical stuff, they come at me, you take the center, then I strike back. Okay. So h3 is fine. Bishop h2. His best move is a3. Now that's just a computer recommendation. Who cares about that? This is a human move. You get your bishop out. It's normal. It's approximately equal, let's say. It's gonna really come down to your strike in the center. f6. That seems good. Yeah, that seems good for black. I mean, black has played really reasonably. Mr. Denisenko, Oleg, he's got the bishop out, so he wants to go maybe bishop here and bishop here or something. Castle is king. So for black, that seems very reasonable. He secures his center. Here's the knight. Yeah, he can't be too uncomfortable. Playing with, as a second player, having a reasonable position, it's, at least equal. So, and then f4. So yeah, now I think this is where it was kind of a mixing of ideas because we've already committed the bishop to h2. Now, when you go f4, you're blocking the bishop, and it just seems to be, well, in terms of the risk reward, you're risking by playing f4. There's certain risks and just plain drawbacks to it. The main risk is that you're weakening the e3 pawn. You're gaining space with the weaknesses, and you're also, the drawback is you're simply blocking your bishop. Sure, the knight moves, but then you got to figure out, okay, well, if I want to unleash my bishop, I have to play f5, which will, let's say the knight goes here. Well, he's coming right back again, or the other knight might get there eventually, but that's just going to be a permanent weakness. Not to mention the bishop can eventually exchange for this strong bishop, which will become strong, but then you'd be left with the weak squares in its wake. So, yeah, I have to say, I prefer the computer recommendation. Just a modest bishop e2. Let's see how that might play out. Castle queens. And now remember, in chess 960, even though the pieces are weirdly placed, the rook would be normally, obviously, on a8. But you would end up in a regular castle position. So if you castle queenside, the king is always on c8 and the rook's on d8. So you don't end up like here on g8 on b8. You end up on c8 still with the king. So okay, and then you castle kingside. And again, it's modest, but I happen to really like the bishops. I think the bishops are really well placed here. Look at their scope. Those are excellent bishops. And again, you have your c4 break. If you want to go a little more methodical, a little slower process, you can kind of go a3 and b4 and try to kick the knight. And well, I do like c4 at some point though. I think this combination is going to be nice, where you open up against the king, combined with your pressure on this diagonal against that focal point, that target on c7, as Vukovic gets into an art of attacking chess. And then b4, b5 will be to further pry open that c file, kick the knight out of the way, so you can really get that rook working. So if we're going to kind of x-ray the position, kind of pierce the fog of war and kind of like look through what's going on here, say, look, let's get to the essence. I want the rook here. I want the bishop here. That's my pressure. I need to open that up. So ultimately, you're going to have to play c4. It's going to have to happen at some point. Now after a6, interesting, a6, a3. I think the queen wants to go to a7. You do have to be careful on the queen side if you play a6, because you invite the bayonet attack. b4, b5, which would really crack that open. It would open up lines for white, which is obviously favorable for white, to open up the b file, for instance. Using that as what's the word? It's the bayonet attack. Kind of like since we've created a weakness essentially by playing a6, which allows it's like a lever basically, pry it open, because if it were back on a7, it would take longer to open lines. Well, as I mentioned, b4, b5 combined with c4. But it's played sometimes like in a Sicilian when you castle queenside, for example, a3, to slow down the attack. Okay, so let's say the pieces come out, this b4 idea comes, b5 is coming. Well, then, black follows suit on the opposite side of the board against the white king. Knight goes to b3, bishop b7. Knight centralizes. He didn't go for an immediate b5, but for example, this is just a computer recommendation, queen c3, h5. I don't know. I mean, I think you can often just do it. I mean, I think you could just play b5 here. It's annoying to face, because if you take it, bishop takes, well, you have more to work with now. Sometimes you could even do something like that, combined with the c4 idea, maybe knight b2 to prepare c4. I mean, you're getting the b files open. That's relevant. I would like to have a rook on b1 followed by a rook on c1. That would be good. Okay, so central. This is what the computer recommended. And I don't know. It looks approximately equal. Black is trying to strike over here. White's trying to strike over here. Opposite side castling, highly unclear. Keep in mind though, this is weak here. Just because you're castle here doesn't mean you can't get some play on the king side as well. That knight's coming in. You can shift. You can play on both sides. I think what black would want to do is probably play h4 and then g4 eventually. Because if you go g4, white's going to clog it up with h4. Obviously, just like black shouldn't want open lines, white doesn't want open lines against his king. Okay, let's see. So what actually happened? f4. That was a whole other line. Again, I just feel like, you know, make sure you're consistent in your play. Try not to be redundant in terms of not needing an extra pawn move. Maybe you only need one pawn move to get the bishop out. Try and be as efficient as possible. So if you are going to make a move like f4 after you've already opened the bishop, say to yourself, well, you know, I have to prove that that really works, because you should feel a little uneasy about doing that intuitively. Okay, knight d7, and then c4. I like it. Now again, I think he should have gone to g6. But now it's different. Now it's different because the bishop actually guards f4, which means that we can get an immediate e4. Well, let's see what happens. I'm curious about that because this is a critical line. If we can get a quick e4 in, it may all be good for white here. You're weakening d4, but you can always cover that later. Would he take it? I'm thinking maybe he takes it and sticks the bishop on d5 or something. He's not really obligated to take it. He could just ignore it. But I feel like the bishop's got to do something. Let's say he takes, and the knight takes back. This is a bit porous, I gotta say. It's a little porous in here. But if we can shore it up and castle, it should be okay. But what he'd like to do is kick the knight and then stick his bishop on c5, developing, restricting at the same time, so you can't castle there. Maybe you just castle queenside. Figure out how to get the queen out, though. I still feel like it's a little awkward, though, because sure, you got f4 and e4 in, but you're still obstructed by the pawn on f4. I want harmony. I want coordination. That should be the instinct, right? Not to block things. Well, you found a way to do it. So Kostas ends up playing f5 anyway, which worked out, I think. Wasn't so bad. So first c4, trade, knight takes. You know, I think probably bishop takes. Probably bishop takes. It has a lot of points. Well, two main points. First of all, you're developing your bishop. The knight's already out. The bishop's not out. So your default should be to bring out to recapture with the piece that's not yet developed. For again, it's about efficiency. It's about not wasting moves, about development, rapid development. Basic principle, right? Don't forget it. Now, another idea is that, yeah, you're letting him get his bishop out, which is not doing anything. But keep in mind, this is a weakness. This is a weakness. These are all weaknesses in black's position. So actually, black's position is a little more porous at the moment. Note that white, by playing c4, has removed the d5 pawn, which gives white more of a center. Once you get that e-pawn rolling, it's a pretty attractive center there. Meanwhile, if the bishop takes, or one way or another it gets traded, maybe now you take. Actually, I kind of like the rook takes, because then you might get here. But let's say the knight takes. That's the standard recapture. This is just a worry, you know. And then how to reach it, though. How to reach it. Maybe knight f2 to d3, f4, knight f4. Okay, it's a little bit of a trek. But hey, if you can get to e6, that's the promised land for the knight. Land on the 6th rank, be an octopus knight with those 8 tentacles. He's kind of become like a hybrid now, right? Get that octopus in there, and then that's power. That's a powerhouse. And then well, I like to say that f5 would unleash this, hitting that in addition to the knight. But of course, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. But the point is, yeah, that's a weakness. So that's another reason why it may behoove you to take back with the bishop instead of the knight. Let me see. Just check. I'm trying to stay on top of this. If Kostas, are you on? Kostas, let me know if you, because I know you. Well, Greek time. I'm not sure how many hours ahead is that. I'm on East Coast time. Let's see. Oh, I hope I didn't mess it up. Back. Gotta make sure this is. Yeah, I think we're good on that. Okay. So, well, if you don't see it now, if you do see it, you can give me some questions or comments you have. Otherwise, hopefully, let me know later on. Okay. If I missed something or you had any thoughts about it. So, knight takes. Bishop check. Knight c3, natural enough. Stop it. And then bishop f7. So, basically, black is committing to castling kingside with bishop f7. He could have castled immediately queenside. That's what the computer prefers. Now, it's saying that it's like -1. Effectively, that black will be up about a pawn. Why is that so good? Well, I mean, it would help black to get an immediate attack over here. Let's say black wants to crack things open with g5. Obviously, if your king is on g8, if you castle king side, it's less comfortable to do that. You're going to weaken your king side. Whereas if you castle queen side, maybe it's more, a little easier to do something like that. Well, bishop e2, and then maybe bishop c5, attacking. That makes sense, putting pressure there. And king f2, yeah, then I was looking at this line with a6, and now queen a7 is kind of nasty. You're just working that diagonal. Got that pocket for the queen, and you're working along with the bishop to really get a lot of power on the diagonal, and that's uncomfortable. Okay, you don't really want to open your own king, but hey, you might do b5 now, because if you're gonna, well, yeah, you would, because if you chase that knight away, you're removing the defender, you would win this one, winning a pawn, forking this and this, winning the exchange next, or you could just keep your bishop there and have a ton of pressure. So either way, it's not pleasant. This is a significant amount of pressure, and again, the bishop is just stuck. So you can see this is a type of chestnut 60s setup where white didn't fully coordinate. A little bit of awkwardness with f4, I have to say. So just watch out for that. And then whereas in the meantime, black has done a really nice job. Everything is coordinated. Just stick the bishop maybe on f7 now and fully centralize. And as I mentioned, maybe g5 is an option to crack that open. And then you can stick your rook on g8 or f8. So there's tons of ideas here. But yeah, black definitely gets the better of that one if they play like that. Bishop f7 is maybe a little less ambitious, but I think it's fine. Queen b1, get the queen out, sure. And then bishop g6, suddenly this doesn't look so good for black. Best move was castle queenside, it says again. And maybe sometimes people are a little reluctant to castle queenside. Well, you have to have a flexible mindset. If it works, it works. There are drawbacks to castling queenside because the king is a little closer to the center. Sometimes it could be attacked on the diagonal, things like that. But you can always move him again. The real question is, what are you going to do about this queen? Do you have to disrupt your own, if you're going to castle it, do you have to disrupt that castle position? Again, I think a6 is doable, but white would try and get the b4, b5 breaking. But that queen coming to a7, this shift is very decisive, as we saw. Okay, so bishop goes to g6. This doesn't turn out so well because now, well, Kostas kind of wanted to do that anyway because he says, well, I have to figure out what to do with this bishop, which is obstructed. So when you play f5, suddenly you're unleashing your bishop on the diagonal, hitting c7, and just in general freeing the piece. And then black has to go back. So basically what happened was white got f5 in for free and then got the move because it was black's move in this exact same position, and black's territory was, black's setup didn't change. They just went here and back. Now it's white's move again. And what does he do? Queen e4 check, which was effective. And now either black has to lose his castling rights. I think, again, that's why castling queenside was so good, because this idea of queen e4 check is unpleasant. It's not losing or anything, but it's just, well, now it's +1. Now white's the one who has a significant advantage, as, the value of being up about a pawn. In computer terms, but white's better essentially. White has an advantage, whereas before black was better if he had done the a6, queen a7 stuff. But we're human, right? So we don't play perfectly, but we can only try. Just try to have, I would say, just try to have a strong plan. Try to have coordination of your pieces, especially in 960. Queen e4 check. 97. Okay, I mean that's reasonable. You block. You really don't want to lose your castling right. And then this is where this interesting move happened. This is just, at first I was like, wait, is this just a pure blunder? Well, the computer says blunder, but it was, I would say, double question mark, maybe with one exclamation mark. Or I've seen it before with 2 question marks followed by 2 exclamation marks. There's 2 question marks is blunder, 2 exclamation marks is a brilliant move. So it's kind of like somewhere between the two, because it's not just like, the way I view a blunder is it's just flat out losing. If you either drop a checkmate, or you drop a queen, or a piece, or you end up getting a significantly worse, maybe losing position. But given that white ends up having practical chances, okay, I'd at least have to give him an exclamation mark after maybe a bad move or a dubious move, or 2 question marks, 1 exclamation mark. So the best move, it says, was knight d2. Now, interestingly enough, like in this case, it just so happens that the conservative, the modest move is actually the move that just does really well. It doesn't seem like it's that good, but I mean, this queen on e4 is really powerful. I mean, with the pressure here, this pawn turns out to be good. At the moment, all of white's pieces are just striking, well, almost all of them. And then once this bishop comes out, you're good. But still, like right now, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces activated, an annoying pawn that's a thorn in his opponent's side. So let's say bishop goes back, trade it, and then you activate that piece. So now we have another piece out. Rook goes to d8, and just castle. Everything's out, and it's just such a great position because the king can't castle without dropping the knight. You can't trap the queen because the queen would just take d6 next. And the knight's pinned here, meaning there's no obstruction here. No obstruction of the diagonal. Not justice. Right? d5. So d5. Well, kind of trying to disrupt white's plans a bit. And then queen would just go here, enhancing the pressure on d7. Okay, again, trying to mitigate the pressure, trading. But now this rook is stuck, pins, and the king still can't castle because the rook would drop. So in the meantime, white just kind of starts entering on this porous position. There's a lot of weaknesses in here, on the dark squares in particular. Well, theoretically that's weak, but at the moment, practically speaking, there's a lot of protection on it. That's obviously a glaring weakness still, e6. That's always going to be a weakness because no pawn, again, both pawns moved, can't defend it. So queen a7, hitting e3, reasonable. Knight, beautiful. Anytime you're playing an isolated pawn, you just stick your knight in the way. This is a possibility. b5, but more. This one reminds me of my last game I played in the DC Chess League. My opponent did that, but my pieces, like my bishop was heading for a5 and stuff. The pieces are just, they're going to find a way in. It's kind of like when your opponent pushes so much, you may not have an immediate win, but you're playing risk-free. You just say, okay, how am I going to probe this position? How am I going to finesse this and just kind of like get, just kind of weave my pieces into, kind of carve into your position and win. So queen a5, castles. This is just a sample line. Knight moves, and knight's going to f4, and once you get there, where are we headed? I thought we were going to e6 maybe, but we're going to c5 as well. I mean, you could go to e6, either way, and then you can chase the queen off. There's something like that. I think you're totally fine going with knight there though, because if you take once, you just come back in, and it's super comfortable position. Significant amount of pressure. Although the knight c5 idea is pretty potent also. Let's say I don't know what else to do. Let's say, well, you can't even go here because. This doesn't look comfortable. I mean, you have this. This isn't under pressure. This is under pressure. If you come here, well, now we can happily bring the knight in with a tempo. I mean, it's just infiltration. That's not what you want. So yeah, I think the simple way to go is just knight d2, and you're attacking laterally against the bishop. And if the bishop wants to take, well, you just take back, and now you have the bishop pair, and that's actually a super strong bishop now. And you can't block without dropping the f pawn. Let's get into some of into the weeds of the middle game now. Now that we're kind of exiting the opening. So the chess 960 component is kind of done. This is unique because this is the first person who has submitted chess 960. I know Kostas and I both love chess 960. We've played several times against each other, and I often analyze my own chess 960 games on there when I'm streaming. So we know each other through that. So that was fun looking at that. But now we're deep in the middle game. We're fully in the middle game after this happens. So now Kostas is giving up a piece. I think he did it intentionally with knight d6. Because at first I thought, wait, why are you giving up the bishop or the knight? It turns out though that it's kind of a difficult situation for black here because he's stuck in the center, the classical theme of the centralized king, and you just throw everything in the kitchen sink at him and try and catch him. So again, the knight's trapped, and anytime the king castles, white gets the knight back, the pawn's hanging, knight's hanging. It's not pleasant. So obviously, black wants to hold on to the piece, and black should be winning. I mean, the computer says minus 4.8. That's like almost a rook up in value. But practically speaking, that's what I'm saying. It's not just a pure blunder. I mean, if black plays 100% correctly, but for practical purposes, we still have something. So d5 was played to kick it back. Sure, you could have played a6 to attack the bishop. Now the bishop takes, luring the king out. You could have just kept a piece on the board and gone here, hitting g7, sure. But this is okay. And then you hit the king. Knight blocks, reasonable. And then he just makes the nice, calm castling. I like a move like that. Just nice and calm under pressure. You sacrifice a piece or a pawn, and you just play nonchalantly because you don't need to overreact. Don't need to freak out. You just mobilize everything, and in the meantime, you say, "All right, prove to me that your king is safe." Well, black can do that, but it's a task. It's still a task. So interestingly, well, the king tries to go back, but that wasn't the right way to do it. I mean, you think if you want to go back, you should at least sort of castle by hand, like manual rather than automatic castling, where you would bring that rook out. So okay, that's the European style. Huh? You bring it out manually and then go back with the king. But instead he goes back immediately. Or it's saying, look, for example, if queen b8, which is again that's kind of a computer move is the best move. But no, I think he wants to go out, or it wants to go out this way, and then talk. Yeah, I mean, if you can get that king on b8, kind of replace the queen. So we're not castling with the rook, we're castling with the queen effectively. We're trying to, but then white should strike in the center, of course. Black should seal it up. Knight will come in. Black keeps pushing. It's a computer line, but it's interesting. But now the king ended up going the other way, manually castling. Still, it was achieved. And yeah, white doesn't have anything there. I mean, you can block. All the pieces are going to get traded off, and the black king is sought refuge. So you're not going to checkmate the king. You're not going to get anything out of this, and black is up a piece. So for all intents and purposes, winning position. But now the point is, does white have compensation? Yeah, white does have some compensation now. First of all, it's the harmony of the pieces. You have all your pieces out, you're mobilized. Meanwhile, the queen's still stuck in the corner, the rook is stuck in the corner, and there's no foreseeable future for that rook, especially with the king obstructing it. So again, this obstruction theme keeps coming up. There's the pieces that sort of pieces and pawn interplay, like with f4 pawn. Well, that black helped him deal with that. Oleg gave him did a favor for him with bishop u6. But now Oleg is also, he has this awkwardness in this position. So after king e8, e4. Okay, well that's good. I like that. So the king is misplaced. You want to open it. Now, I don't like this. G takes e4. Again, like the computer recommended earlier, you have to do this. You have to seal the lines up. That's just thematic. If your king is in the center, do not open lines. There's rule number one. If you have a centralized king, shut the lines down and do whatever you can to get your king out of the center, or try to make some kind of makeshift structure, some kind of makeshift fortress. Maybe you have the bishop, potentially the knight, but at the moment it's pinned. But if you can kind of congeal, I guess, around the king and kind of fortify him, that would be good. But it's a little difficult now. So rather than being like plus or minus 4 point something for black, now it's -2. It's coming down -2, and then it's about to be equal all of a sudden because white's going to get full compensation. So Kostas, very nicely done. You maybe played a little speculatively, but now you're coming back with some really energetic play. So d takes e4, of course, should seal it up. Knight just takes, and not rushing for queen takes. I think what would happen? Well, the knight would just block. Yeah, you don't need that. If you take with the queen, the knight just blocks, because the point was the queen was at the moment blocked. And again, that's why that a6 move would have been handy, because then b5 would be at the ready. But now you have to kind of go out of your way for black to stop the pin. And now obviously black has got to worry about rooks coming in and hitting him on the e file as well. So it's a headache now for a human to defend. Maybe a computer could figure it out, but for a human player, yeah, it's not so easy. So after knight takes e4, reasonable. Oh, now there's actually a direct threat. What's that? Well, look at this. They're both weak squares. So, I mean, white has a ton of compensation in terms of active pieces, weak squares in here. All these holes, all these, even that, all this is attackable. And the king is he's a sitting duck. So just throw everything at him. Rook d8. Okay, and now that's the move that just brings it back to equal again. And if it's equal, it's probably bad for black, because if you're up a knight and it's equal, something, that compensation is dangerous. So best move is king f8. So for instance, a sample line. this gets interesting. Queen a3 check. Knight blocks. And then we're already eyeing that knight, x-raying through this knight. What we're threatening taking here, unleashing the rook on this. So the queen could come in. That's nasty. So obviously he defends it. And then he would still take it. That's pretty hard to see, but it allows, it's just like a rapid infiltration. And then now we're still putting pressure on the knight and now on f6. And if the rook goes here, well, you're dropping e7. So you can't defend it. Well, he would drop it. Well, how bad is it? Let's just say he did, I don't know. It's really not easy. Let's say he brought the queen here or something. So queen here, how bad is this? Oh wait. Possible to sack once and bring the other rook over. No, I think we can take this one. Very uncomfortable. Rook here. Oh, and then we're winning a piece back. So you get your piece back with some. Oh, well, we're down 2 pieces now though. Jack, but still, I mean, look at this king. Okay, if he goes here, you're running into this, and obviously this is even worse. Now you get forked, and you have the pin, and this is falling with check, and everything's gonna fall. So yeah, I mean that looks pretty dangerous. So this was an interesting idea. And then you get 1 piece back. You're still down a bishop. The king's exposed. Now the rook just swings up, threatening the check. Tries to stop the check because that would be deadly. And then the second rook comes up. You can't stop both. Now if you play h4, you weaken g4. You're coming this way or you're coming this way. You can't stop both. And that's probably just winning. For instance, queen over. We get our check. And we're okay, get our piece back, and that's game because you can't do anything about that. You're going to invade, and that's a mate. After he takes, you couldn't get out of that. So yeah, I mean, come on. With an exposed king like that, you have no prospect. There's no hope there for Oleg. So that would have been interesting. Knight takes e4, rook d8. But this was the move that just gives white an equal game, gives him equality. And so after queen a3. Okay, sure, we can quibble about it. You could have gotten rook ce1. That's reasonable. But I kind of like queen a3. I think it has a purpose to it. You're first of all, you're aiming in here, which is going to be more effective once the rook comes. Just working those get them in the crosshairs, working those long range diagonals and files. And we're looking at knight d6, getting some material back. So that's dangerous. Queen b8. And then it says it's a blunder, rook fe1. I mean, it seems reasonable, but the thing is, you are allowing the knight to come here. See, once you allow knight e5, then black's kind of just winning again. Black is, I mean, not fully just up a full piece, because he still needs to get that rook out. So white still has a certain degree of compensation, but still, what's your plan? Okay, you want to go queen g3, you could still go rook g8. Black's a little awkward, but eventually he gets out of it and he's up a piece. So this is the type of thing where you have this pressure. It's fleeting, you know. You need to strike at this moment. So that might, you know, this is a hard move to see, but in a sense, it's almost forcing that. It's necessitated because you need to strike when the iron's hot, and this is awesome. So now you're down a full rook when he takes back. No, more than that. This is amazing. It's really an amazing line. This is the most beautiful line, I think, of this that's possible in this whole game. So with rook takes c6. So basically the idea is nothing can block now. Sitting duck here, and you can bring your rook over, but you do it with tempo. You strike on. This reminds me of a game I was actually just looking at, showing my students from Lasker's Manual of Chess. It's a game by, what was that guy's name? I think he was like a Hungarian player against Spielman. Where it's a locked up position, and he like stacks the bishop on c4 to open that line with tempo again. Beautiful. That's with check. So if he takes back, well, there you have to take back because you're covering this, you're covering this, you're covering this. Queen and the knight. So you have to take back that queen knight combo, and then rook e1 check, and now it's over. Queen e5. Well, actually, no, it's not over. You're gonna have it's 2 rooks and the bishop for a queen, but that's certainly better for white than just being down a piece. I mean, now you're probably just going to get a draw. You can check them all day long. It's going to be really hard for black to try to win that position. You can win that though, with 2 rooks in it, because that's technically 2 rooks and a bishop. It's 13 points against the queen, which is 9, but take it with a grain of salt. But white's also getting pawns. It's a mess, but you at least have all those checks, so it's really hard for black to win that. Now, wait, what if he went, I didn't look at this one yet. What if he went here? I mean, I'm assuming rook down looks pretty nasty there. Oh yeah, it's a mate. That's a forced mate. You try and calculate that. It's a mate in 3. So we start trying to calculate with the rook check. Only move is king back, since you're already covering this diagonal. So he's got to go back, and then we have a new diagonal, that one, and then he's suffocated in there. So when you check, right out, check again, and then he's smothered, and the queen has to block. Hey, very nice. So yeah, a lot of good lines. And again, that's where it relates to this. We're going to look at this game real quick, flip through it by So versus Kasparov, as well as this famous Steinitz versus von Barbelen or whatever it is, one of his famous games, where you just open the e-file. It's that theme of opening. It's in the art of attacking chess as well. There's a whole section on that. When the king is not castled, just tear that e-file open. Do whatever you can to do that. But this is the main line. Rook check. Oh, and then queen e5, right? And you take it, push, threatening queen e7 is not so pleasant. He runs again, come over, and you play a4. Is white winning this? I think white's pretty close to winning, mostly because, again, that rook is still stuck in the corner. If this rook were over here or something, it would be a lot harder for white to just run like with the pawns, not to mention black would get counterplayed. But this pawn's also just a thorn, because you always have some swings, swing the queen around, getting there and mate. So black will be tied down. So maybe what's the evaluation of this position? Is white winning or what? After a4, it says equal. I guess it sees like a perpetual. Maybe white needs to do a perpetual or something. There is h5. That's a good resource. And then the rook can guard g7 or come up and swing. And he can actually do that. Maybe even get after this guy. So, but in the meantime, white's going to try and run with this one, or maybe he just needs to agree to a draw and just get his perpetual check. But rook fe1 was not correct because it allows knight e5. But there's still another chance. There's still another chance. This was creative. Very well. It makes sense because you're trying to provoke the pawn to take you, essentially overloading the pawn or trying to remove the defender from the knight. But the queen guards. Still, if you're going to take it, it's going to really soften up the defense here. And then we're going to maybe be able to strike again. What would have happened? It says best move was queen g3. That's reasonable too. Just hitting g7, sure, why not? But that's a very interesting move though. So bishop d5. Now what would have happened had he just taken here? How does that go? You go rook c5 after the knight. The bishop can block it. You keep ganging up on the knight. King just so you're going to get the piece back. It looks like. But black kind of consolidates there. You can check. Oh, you still can't get the rook in the game. Maybe h5, rook h6 theme again. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say rook goes back, whatever. Let's just see what would happen. What is it? What kind of lines is it thinking of? It says black is effectively up 5 points, like up the rook. Queen c7, queen e6. I don't know about that. You have rook e8 coming at any moment. Oh no, you didn't. Do you? There might be some tricks there. But I still really don't like that rook in the corner. It's not really appetizing. You want to get the rook out. I wonder if you could just do it immediately. Like, what if you did this? Oh, then are you going to hang the g7 pawn? Oh, actually, then white suddenly just wins. Rook c7 check, and you can't go back. That's a loss because mate and 2. And then you unleash the queen here, and you're going to take that and mate. Very nice. So yeah, there's still prospects here if he takes it. So, well, his opponent wasn't given into that, so he just did that immediately, which seems good, centralizing. He should have castled queenside earlier, though, then he wouldn't have had any of these troubles. But hey, hindsight's 20/20. Rook cd1. Okay, that's nitpicky. I mean, hard to see that rook cd1 is, because you don't really want to line your rook up with their rook, because white is not trying to trade off too many pieces. Although, to the contrary, There's that Alpha Zero game, that really cool Alpha Zero game with that special Queen H1, that crazy like Queen H1 move when Queen went here, going like around somewhere and coming maybe from H6 and going down to get behind the bishop or something, and the bishop came up. But Alpha Zero against Stockfish in when was that? That was in I think end of 2016, or I mean end of 2017. So Alpha Zero ended up trading a bunch of pieces, and it just had like a queen and one piece left. So maybe you give up a rook and a knight or something for trade it down a piece, but the relative piece activity benefited Alpha Zero, and it still won. So don't be orthodox about it. You know, that's what the computers show us. They get us out of our old ways of thinking. So they have that benefit. So rook c5, h6, knight e6. Well, okay, we are allowing a trade, which he did. Sure, we could have just kept it. And that's again, that's that question. Should we keep the piece? We should have. I think we could have done that. Sure. Well, the bishop could take if it wants, but if the bishop takes, then they're really weakening those squares in there. So you could have gone back with the idea of also hitting the knight. So, for instance, if the king moves, trade it. Yeah, but we really don't have much firepower. And again, black is, I think, finally consolidating, getting the rook out and manually castling, and tuck that king away here, probably h8, and that's fine. Okay, knight e6, bishop takes, pawn takes, queen d6. Now it's saying black is up like 7 points almost. Let me get rid of that analysis though, so we can just think it through without becoming dependent too much. We can't say we can't say there's not a certain degree of dependence already. I'm not going to lie, it's there, but trying to use the computer to benefit us, but let us still be free thinkers. Queen d6. So what is the queen trying to do? Well, just tying him up a little bit. But in this case, yeah, of course, there's just a fork. Okay, they missed that. Yeah, I don't really see any drawback to that. You could just do the fork. They could have done that, and then that just kind of liquidates everything, and black should win that position. Black did end up winning in the end, but white had a couple more chances because black missed that kill right there. So the finish right there. So queen takes a7. And then this was interesting. So now white's like, hey, you had black said you had all this fun with your ideas of, or there was that one idea we talked about, knight takes f6 check, opening lines, or hanging your knight on g5. He's like, let me hang my knight too. Well, it makes sense because he gets his fork. But maybe, I think what happened was psychologically, he's like, oh, I could have had that fork. And actually, still could have had the fork. Maybe he's like, well, you know what? I want to have a more fun fork. Who knows? But, I mean, he saw the idea of coming here. So you pretty much have to take it. But then he gets a series of checks, which is certainly not fun for white. But, amazingly, white does hold on here. White should have the draw. You can check, check, check. But then it came down to that one lethal move. So rook b8. Now that's just a passive move. Queen a4 check, that's good. Queen e4 is good, centralization. And now it's like coming from a piece down, I think a rook down in one line, to down a pawn. And actually that pawn's irrelevant now because black is still not coordinated. White's actually the one who's coordinated. Sure, the king's exposed, but if you can kind of get behind the scenes, get in here somehow, there's some very dangerous focal points where you can try and get a checkmate. So all it takes is just the queen coming in and checking. So of course the black queen needs to keep checking to keep white busy. But oh, this is where the mistake was made. Anything but anything but that. It didn't seem that obvious actually, but you just have to go for the draw. Just go king f1 or king f3. Just kind of wait around and get a draw. And black needs to meanwhile watch out for this check too. But by going to d1, now the problem with then black sort of counter blundered, which is typical. Maybe got a little excited, but the reality is that this whole thing with if king d1, the king c1, this is where white could win it. King c1, and this doesn't do anything. Check, because it's guarded. There's no fork or anything. There's no more good checks. And now even though white's down a pawn temporarily, well, he's about to get it back. He's got a really strong pawn here. And most importantly, again, the lack of coordination. King is kind of precariously placed. These guys can run fast. Sure, black has passed pawns too. It's going to be 3 versus 3, but you trade down. Come in, hitting that one. And then these run, and due to the fact that the rook reached the promised land, the 7th rank, and the king, so the king is awkward. That's the main advantage for Kostas in this position. He can freely run, and also the lack of coordination means that you can just come here, bring your rook down and queen, and there's really nothing that it's very hard to stop that, because in the meantime you're just keeping the king at bay on e8, and by the time you get these guys in, or maybe you get a second rook in and start making some real threats this way. But I think really the main plan is probably just shove the a pawn down the board. That looks pretty dangerous. But rook d5, another blunder. Maybe they were short. I mean, if this were a long game, like a 90-minute game, they probably would have had a little more time. Although time pressure happens regardless. But I like 90-minute games with 30-second increments. So, you know, I'll just milk that increment. I'll use it to like 1 second. Sometimes it kind of freaks my opponent out, because I think so, because it kind of unnerves them. Because I was like, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, calmly make the move, and they're like, this guy's supposed to lose on time. Well, you got to take advantage of that. And so effectively, it's like you're always playing with as if you have like a minute on the clock all the time. Maybe once in a while you make a couple quick moves and you have it like a minute or 2 minutes, and you just go down to the bottom and need to play accurately while being feasible. Rook d5. So yeah, again, king c1. Why was it a blunder? Rook takes. Now wait, another blunder. Oh wow, this is like the contest of blunders. At this point, queen h5 check. Oh, amazing, amazing! Because even though it's a very counterintuitive move, because you hang your queen by placing on h5, where it looks like the rook would normally take it, but because there's this X-ray through here, the rook is pinned to the other rook, so it's pinned to the king. So yeah, you can't take it, which would mean that black would actually, by going here, it's a completely, the evaluation, it completely shifts. It's a critical move. If he had seen this, queen h5 check, king moves. There's nothing good here. You may as well hang your queen. But okay, then you pick up the queen. You pick up the rook, and now black's up a rook. And finally, oh wait a second, it's queen g6 check. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's not mess around. Let's do this one. No checks, no nothing. Wait, how bad would that be? I'm curious. Check. Well, that would be very bad, because then you get mated after thinking you win. See, there's drastic fluctuation. But if here, this is still pretty bad. I mean, it's uncomfortable. Oh wow, amazing. And then now you get the queen back, but you have 2 rooks for the queen. I don't know. It's like equal-ish now. That's insane. But yeah, okay, take with the rook, and then black is up a rook and winning. But rook takes d5 check, and now white is winning, or should be winning. So queen c7, and then white blunders, rook e3. What's going on here? So we have to be very careful. And I don't know, this I think it's just the nature of the game that you have the heavy artillery of the rooks and queens. You have an open board. You have centralized kings. You have a passed pawn here. Previously, you had a king that was really under fire. So everything is just really critical. And so in a position like that, you kind of have to have like your meter for how critical is this position. And when you see that position, you say that's a critical position for sure. So I better take my time. Now again, I don't know. I don't think it shows what the time was. Oh, it does. It does. Oh, okay. That's why. Because there was 13. Okay, Kostas was down to 13 seconds. Yeah. 10 seconds and then 13 because you get 3 seconds or 5 seconds from it. I don't know. It says 13 now. But because it's 10, so he used up a couple seconds and then it went to 13, right? Okay. So queen c7 and then rook e3. Best move was queen h5 check. What would happen there? Queen h5 checks. This may have been the clincher right here. But again, this is irrelevant. I mean, it's interesting to see, but for the purposes of Kostas' performance in this game, it's irrelevant because we can't expect him to see all this with a few seconds left. These are all, lines that need a lot of care, which is why I like longer games. I mean, blitz games are fun. That's why I like increment. Also, you can get a little more time to not play just junk chess, which is fun too. Don't get me wrong, but I like to also try to play your best chess too. practically speaking, because I mean you don't have time to play 2-hour games every day, but maybe a 30-minute game or maybe a 10-minute game with some increment and so forth. Try and get the best you can. So wow, so it's saying push queen, and then what is going on here? Where's the tactic? Oh, it's just hanging. Yeah. So it's just saying that when you check, and then you just to win the rook. There's no checkmate or anything. And then up a rook. Okay, then you have to deal with these pawns, but you attack the first one, make him defend, and then you get the G pawn. And then once you get these two, king comes up, and you can come over and stop the pawns. And then actually what you could do is then you can start to push the pawns over here. Although if you go here, I think black's going to go here and lock it up. But we'll have time. You get the king over here. Once you stop these guys, then the rook has time to like come from behind and check or get these pawns or swing over here and pick up this one. And then while you're dealing with these pawns, stop those, stop these guys, and then this guy, the A pawn is just going to run. So that was the last chance that Kostas had. There were a few opportunities to win there. So it just shows you his sacrifice of giving up the knight on d6. It actually didn't lead to a loss. I mean, that itself could have led to a win based on all the pressure that his opponent was under. And I guess I didn't look earlier, but I guess he must have drained his opponent's clock as well, just making him defend. The attacker's advantage, as Kasparov says. So king e7, rook c3 hitting the queen, queen d6. Oh, and again, yeah, that's reasonable. Just take the pawn on b5. I mean, if it's free for the picking, because if you go here, now you're going to have to trade queens, and you didn't even get the pawn. You may as well take it while you can. And then you're equal. I mean, 3 for 3. Okay, it says maybe black is a little bit better, but it's a complete mess. It can again, humans, it can fluctuate so drastically by missing the smallest detail. But I would just take the pawn. Yeah, sure. Well, based on, again, I can't say for sure, but I think it looks like the reasonable move there. Takes, comes back to defend. Right, so now we wasted a move to come back. And then his opponent goes after the pawn. But here black is winning because of these 3 connected pawns. But he wants to go after this pawn. It's still a task. It's saying the best move is king e7. That's reasonable, yeah, just to blockade the pawn and then push. But still, I mean, practically speaking, I can't really argue about that. I can't argue with this move because you just want to take the pawn. b3. Yeah, that move lacked direct purpose, I think. Oh, he wants to play a4, I see. But still, if you want to compete with those 3 pawns, you can't just go b3 and a4 and have 1 pawn. I mean, maybe the rook even sacks itself for it, but probably the king or something could probably come over and blockade. In the meantime, they can use their rook to cut off the king in some ways, cut off the king and then push these pawns. I mean, or you can just get behind them, and you can, the pawns are going to all mutually support each other. 3 pawns working together. So yeah, I would say, yeah, just go after the pawn. So instead b3, a little slower. Rook takes. Don't trade rooks though. You can't trade rooks. Again, 5 seconds. So you don't have the time to really use your best cognition with 5 seconds left. You have to make. It's more like you're working on your snap judgment. And I'm not. Although that is a good pod. I'm not referring to the podcast, but that is a good. I think it's a podcast or it's a show also that they put on the radio. So rook takes e6 check. King takes e6. Yeah, but once you stop that pawn, you can't contend with the 3. Takes, king d5, and you always have to look at, can you get inside the square? Of course you can't here, but you go like that, you make the diagonal, if just to make the square, or however you want to do it. And if you can't get inside that, you can't stop the pawn. So like, for instance, if the king were here, and the pawn moved to here, if it's white's move, then it's like this. No, he would still be able to get in. But if the king were here, and it's white's move, he goes here, then it would be like that. So then the king wouldn't be able to get inside, and the pawn would win. And that would get there early enough that this pawn is farther behind. So by the time he gets to here, you'd already have your queen. Kind of like in Searching for Bobby Fischer. Well, that was a skewer, but where one queen stops the other queen. But in that case, it was a check, and then you make the king move, and then you take the other pawn. That's if it's like right afterwards. But if you're 2 moves ahead, or even 1 move ahead rather, and you get it first, and you stop the opposing queen, and it should be enough. Although those 3 pawns are still scary. But yeah, a lot of missed chances there, and I think we can attribute that just, I'm not going to be too hard on Kostas because I think it was just the time pressure. So trying to avoid that because but it was so complicated. It was such a complex game, but there were some really nice chances. In particular, there's that knight. What was it? Well, Black had some cool moves too, like the Queen H5. That was a nice way for Black to really clinch the win. But there was that one position. Where was it? Where there was that knight takes F6 stuff. That was before the knight was taken. It was in this position. So yeah, it was the really brilliant idea. I mean, brilliant idea, but one that's mandatory. You just have to take that. You have to take that. Where is it? Rook takes C6. I think it was on this move. Yeah, right here. Just take it to get the open E file. But with the tempo, it's very cool. Check, and then you get the queen, and then it ends up being actually a draw on this line. I think so, or draw-ish anyway. But that would be your best shot. You have to try that. But then there were multiple chances to win as well. But again, you played the fun line. Kostas went for the fun line, which was knight to 6 check, and it was cool and everything. But sometimes just the sober move. Which would have been, because I mean, it's a superior position here. And you don't need, this was, sometimes, the risk, it can allow you to turn a superior position into a win, but it can also turn it into a loss, So think about it, if you're already better, if you already have the advantage out of the opening, well, maybe just play a solid move and just keep your advantage. You got to weigh that out. Again, it's that kind of risk reward. Take a little bit of risk, no risk here, and you still have a reward. Or you take a huge risk and you might not even get that reward. Your opponent might get it. So I would just say, just a solid move. It's kind of hard to see, I guess, because it's a retreat. But after knight d2, it's a really good position, and you have to deal with this, and then just continue your development. And White's really comfortable there. So now let's take a look quickly at this. This was the Kasparov game that Kostas shared with me, the Wesley So, who is one of the strongest players in the world, and he didn't. No, I think he came really close to winning the U.S. Championship. Very strong player, so he'll probably win one of these years. And let me check the channel, make sure everything's good there. It looks like we're green. Are there any? No questions on there. So I guess it'll just be more for the purposes of it's a recorded game, recorded video, and then. Sometimes we get a chat going. So knight f3, g6, e4. Let's just flip through this. So this is like a King's Indian. Okay, let's get to the good part. So the idea was c5, breaking open the position. And you can see also Kasparov's position, he's a little bit behind in castling. So he immediately strikes. And look at how So is just so energetic, similar to how Kostas played when your opponent's king is not castled. Play really energetically. And again, it was that hit on the d6 square. He didn't sack a piece yet though. He sacked a pawn. Knight c8. This should be 3. d6. Castles. Takes on c7. Now we're gaining access to d6. And then look at that, b4. That's a hard move to see. But look what he's doing. He's got the d file open. Now he wants the c file open. He just takes the file. And now he says, what are you going to do about that bishop? It's dangerous. Knight comes out, guards it, but doesn't matter. Queen's coming. Now look at, now you got this one. Still can't castle because we would probably do, a range of options. But if you castle, you have knight takes e5 check, or just knight takes b6 with unleashing the check if your king goes here. Oh, you can't make the move, but if you castled, you would just go knight takes b6 and unleashing the queen, and then you just take the rook, at least. Or you simply take the e5 pawn, king moves, and then you can go knight f7 check and win that rook and get into f7. That's good too. Oh no, yeah, because if you take on a8, due to the pin on the bishop, you can't even take back. Then He'd go queen b7, kind of murky. But either way, you don't want to castle because of all the pressure he's generating. So he goes h6. A little slow. So just keeps on centralizing. Every piece is out, activated. Takes the knight. No problem. I want to move the knight anyway, he says. So he does a nice move. So he unleashes everything. I mean, he gives up a piece. So it is really similar to Kostas' game. You end up with one pawn in the center. Although in that game, there was never the e5 pawn. It was gone. So there was even less central control. It was more about whether the knight could blockade, and that's why you got to take that knight with the rook earlier. But in this game, he's really breaking through on the c file. Rook b8. Oh, look at that. That's savvy. So he attacks the bishop. The bishop just sneaks back. He says, okay, if you take, I take with check, and now your queen's done because you're under attack on fire on both lines. But he just goes back and he keeps all the pressure. So queen b7, really nicely done. And then he takes this one. That reminds me actually of the opera box game, or the Morphe opera game, where he just stacks the exchanges but sets up those pins. He's relentless. And then he gets this one. Okay, now you got the pin pin piece under attack, so he has to do here. And then he brings in another piece to remove the one that's defending the pin piece. What if rook c8? That's what happened, but then this is lost because after bishop takes it. And so now he gets his piece back. Well, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns, 5 pawns. But you get your piece back, so bishop pair, and we got queen just dominating the position in that. Speaking of a weak square, that e6 square is really exploded there, and it's over because you're just unleashing your queen next, so that the king is dominated and he has nowhere to go. And what's coming next? I mean, everything is coming. Well, this is loose. I mean, you can move the bishop anywhere you want. Probably even bishop d8 to clog up the rook. You would defend it. You'd stop the rook, and then the king would have to move, and then you've got. I mean, there's so many options here. Maybe some infiltration with this rook, but yeah, I mean, the king is centralized. He's under attack, and white is not done any material anymore, so he resigned. And then this game, which I'd recommend looking up, classic game, Steinitz versus Varn Bardaleben or something. Which was game of the day, the Battle of Hastings, England. So they call it Battle of Hastings on chessgames.com. This is 1895, and this is from the Italian game. So check this out. This is, again, similar theme where Italian game, you're playing for d4, open up the center. Or you can always, I think at e5, you can do that as well. Or maybe you get struck with d5. So he just takes the bishop. So, this is a sack where you're sacrificing the pawn on e4. Black strikes back though, which I think is a good idea. Now the castles. Now here's where he went astray. So he does this. I mean, you have to find a way to castle. Maybe he thought his king's side would come under attack. I don't know. I don't see why not. Well, this is under attack twice. You could even consider bishop takes c3, or maybe knight takes and bishop back, and then just get your king castled. But he does this, and then you hit the queen. Okay, he goes. It seems reasonable. But check out this. This is really nice. So he's basically saying, okay, how can I make the king stay in the center? How can I get that e file? So he takes on d5, and then he takes on e7. No. First he takes here. So basically, what he's doing is he's saying, well, you're going to have to take back with your knight now, which is going to get stuck in front of your king. So he kind of pierced the fog of the position. He started to have like this X-ray, and he's saying, okay, after all these exchanges happen, well, it's just pure calculation, but it's that real lucid visualization, and then you end up with this, where the knight gets under attack and is pinned to the king, and you can't do anything to castle. So he tries f6. If you go back with your queen, you're simply going to face queen e2. And you're still going to have to do something like this to try and get the king out there and then get the rook over. So, again, trying to castle by hand, but easier said than done. So you got this really, really massive pressure here. So f6 was played. He doubles up on it anyway. Queen goes back. And then he goes after the c pawn. So he just activates on the open lines. Well, this is called a half open file and then open files for those who didn't know about it. And then look at this. Brilliant idea, really nice idea. It's a clearance idea. So what you do is you go here. They can only take back with the pawn, because the queen would, if you take with the queen, you drop the knight, since you have 2 on it. But then you just get the d4 square, and now, so it's about the value of the power of your pieces at the moment, rather than material, because these pieces are not in the game. So you see a lot of classical games like that, where king comes out, knight comes in, and then suddenly you've got all these threats where you're aiming at the queen, and you want to go knight g5 check and hit the queen. You're threatening, obviously you're threatening knight takes g7 check, and then a mate on f8. So you have to go block, and then we still get this check. And this was cool. So now you get, because the loose queen, you can't take the knight, you gotta defend your queen. Well, now you get this. This is brilliant. So again, the exploitation, perfectly exploiting everything in the position. All of Steinitz's pieces are optimally placed to exploit this, where you have the X-ray on the queen. So when you take this one, you can't take with the queen, because then you just simply get this one. You're up a piece in the end. So, and if the king takes, then we're going to get rook check, I think. If he did, so he actually has to move. This is cool. If the king took, I think it's going to be rook check. And then again, he has to defend this one. Let's say he goes back. What is the solution here? Maybe knight, oh yeah, knight e6 check. And then the king has to step into the line of fire. And I don't know the exact refutation, but it doesn't look healthy. It does not look healthy. I think that's the way to go, though. I don't see what else to do after king there. I think it's got to be rook check. Queen check doesn't seem to do it. Yeah, so rook check, knight check, and then we can pick our poison. But oh, of course, check here, unleashing it, and then you win this one. Actually, you don't just take the queen with the knight. You're gonna actually take with the queen because you're guarded, and that's gonna be a mate soon. So as it turned out in the game, we have, this was kind of cool though, because when the king moved, you just keep on checking. This was just a nice finish. Check again, and you still, if you take it, you're still going to end up in that situation where you're down a rook or down a knight at the end. And if the king takes, you drop the queen with check. But you can't try to win the queen yet, because he's going to get checkmated. That's why White's trying to set it up with checks. He keeps checking and he can't touch it. But then it shows that if he does this after there's a mate in 10 moves, and yeah, I'd recommend looking at that. But anyway, it just shows you that idea of really exploiting that, setting that up so you get that open E file. And in this case, he just sacrificed the pawn. That's all. And then he had his other sacrifices that couldn't even be accepted because it was so strong. So yeah, that's the game. And some lines that Kostas, another game that Kostas showed, and one that I showed that are kind of showing some similar themes. But yeah, it was a really interesting game. A lot of fascinating concepts. So I'm glad you submitted that, Kostas, and hopefully you got something out of that. And feel free to submit anyone else if you want to submit your games. Yeah, it's just mind-boggling complications. But I almost wouldn't have even considered this move, knight d6, because at first glance it just seems like it doesn't do anything. And sure, it's not theoretically sound. It shouldn't work. But again, we're playing against humans. Even against computers, you can sometimes do a sacrifice. The computer says, "Hey, I get a pawn," but they're better at that now at realizing that it doesn't work. To take it sometimes, but kind of like, hey, it's a murky situation, you're getting compensation. But again, it's fun, but for practical purposes, I think the main lesson is just, don't rush, because you have a better position. Don't risk if you don't need to, right? Risk only when it's appropriate. Always, and try to avoid that time pressure so you can find those nice wins when your opponent gives it to you. But it fluctuate. The evaluation fluctuated so drastically throughout the game. It was really fascinating. So yeah, thanks for sharing that game, and let me know if you have any questions about it.